and gentlemen, welcome back to Hoops Journey. A privilege to have a historian of basketball in our country, a guy who has been with our national team for decades, coached numerous U Sport teams, involved in the college league as well, a rich history, played against some of his teams, connected with guys that he's coached, I've played with as well. He's down visiting his son in Indiana right now. We're really, fortunate that he's taken the time to be with us. We have none other than Mr. Dave DeAveiro tonight. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
We're good, just juggling lives and basketball seasons and all that stuff, but getting through it and doing our best, man. So, I think there's lots to be negative about these days, but I think it's important to kind of try to find those positive things each day and do the best we can.
Totally. It's been a tough time for 2 years not being able to play or get into gyms and do what we love to do. But, I just got to think positive and be positive. Absolutely.
And let's just get into that right away. How's life for you and your family? Your son, obviously down in the States, and you're able to get down and see him and stuff like that. So that's good. But how have you guys been doing through all this, crazy stuff that we've been working through?
Not bad. I mean, I took the job at Ryerson right at the beginning of COVID. So
crazy.
Yeah, it was a crazy time for me not being able to coach the team that I thought I was going to coach when I got there. And then being in lockdown, you really couldn't do much. So my son was, at that time in his last year at prep school. So we were just trying to find any outdoor courts to train on and places to work on his game before we went away. And so it was it brought us closer together that way. I was able to spend more time with him.
Yeah.
That's I guess you would say the positive thing so far is that I think a lot of families have been able to spend more time together and just have that quality time that you probably wouldn't have had because everyone's doing a little bit of what they're doing, their jobs or schooling, whatever. So, and it's been tough that way, but like I said, we'll get through this and we'll all be better when it's done.
You got it. Yeah. And you say that the quality time with family, as I hear my wife trying to get my 5-year-old out the door to go skiing for the day. And it sounds like someone's sacrificing a lamb. So sometimes the being together was a little bit taskful, but whatever, it's all good. You make a good point there. And those are moments and times that we'll never get back. So good perspective for sure. Let's get right into it. All right. Obviously, basketball, a huge part of your life, so much history that we can get into, and I'm excited to talk more about that today. But tell us about yourself growing up and how sports was around you and who were some of those early coaches that sort of drew you to the game of basketball.
I'm a lifer. Yeah, I can say that I'm a lifer. Going through high school, different times, right? All the different things that are available for kids now weren't available for us in terms of the different clubs, AAU, even the provincial team. It was just a different time for basketball. When you're in high school, you played every sport, and that's what I did. I just played every sport and then kind of fell in love with basketball. All my friends were playing basketball, so we spent a lot of time doing that, consumed a lot of my time, and it probably kept me out of trouble playing on the outdoor courts in Toronto and just, being consumed by it. And then, when I was in high school, I was at a pretty good high school where we were one of the best teams, in the province and probably throughout Canada. And my high school coach, Mike Cates, who ended up, was the coach at Humber College for years.
He was your high school coach too?
Yeah, he was my high school coach too.
No way.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
That's how I ended up at Humber as an assistant with Mike.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, he kind of wasn't always on track academically when I was in high school. So Mike was the kind of guy that got me on track, told me that, hey, you can go on and play basketball at high school. And so that kind of got me on track a little bit. And that was my goal, was to get to post-secondary school and play basketball at university. And so I was able to do that at the University of Ottawa. And then, I got into coaching right after I graduated and spent a season playing overseas in Portugal.
And so those high school years, you mentioned just, having a really good team. You had some good players and guys with you. You just found yourselves just playing a lot of ball, kind of a 24/7 passion it just became, or, and when did you decide to drop those other sports and really focus in on basketball? if you remember. It's not that long ago, right?
No, because in high school, you played every sport up. It's probably till like grade 12, right?
Yeah.
Again, you weren't specializing when you were 13 and 14 because we didn't have trainers. We didn't have AAU. You're just kind of kid. You're just doing whatever, right? In the summertime, you're outside playing baseball. You're outside playing football, playing hoops, whatever you were doing. There was so many different things to do. Now kids are just so locked in and specialized. I don't know whether that's a good thing or whether it's a bad thing. With kids at an early age being specialized in one particular sport and missing out. And now, high school sports, especially basketball, is pretty much dead in Ontario because the prep school scene is taking it over. And so it's a whole different landscape right now.
Yeah, it really is. And we're feeling that surge over here too, and especially with the pandemic and things like that, sort of the lack of coaching at the high school level and those Mike Cates, right? The teacher coaches that are in the building, God bless the volunteers who give up their time, but those teacher coaches are vital. And I think out here in BC, we're finding it's a harder thing and schools aren't making it as much of a priority to hire those people either, right? It used to be an advantage to get you a job. Now it's 50-50 with someone else in their resume, which is a whole nother podcast and I have whole other opinions on, right? And, right. Culture in schools and things like that. But
that's how I got hired. I'm a teacher by trade. So I got hired at a school because I was willing to coach the sports at the school. So it's totally different now. You're getting outside people coming into the school to coach the teams now. So
do you ever look back and think about like how fortunate or how it's interesting that you had someone like Mike as your high school coach just to get it all rolling for you? Like if maybe you had a lesser high school experience, maybe things go a little bit differently for you. You know what I mean? And then it just sort of starts to snowball from there, it seems like.
Yeah. I don't know where I'd probably be without Mike sitting me down and, putting me on track. Because, I get so consumed by it. I was just living and breathing basketball all day long and forgetting about school a little bit. And Mike had to sit me down and get me on track. Because in Toronto at that time, like basketball was culture, right? You got your name, you got your rep through basketball, right? And that's just the way it was. And so if you didn't have that, you weren't really anybody. So I was consumed by, I needed to get that. I needed to be respected. And on my high school team, I was the only white kid on a all black high school team. So, I had to work
extra hard at earning their respect.
And that's, that was important for me. I needed to get the respect.
Absolutely. No. That's a great point. When did you start to realize that it was something that you could pursue? I mean, you got coach telling you, hey, this is something you can play at the next level. When did you start to believe it and start to think, all right, I want to expand this off to a post-secondary career?
My senior year of high school, I made City All-Star, which is, again, in Toronto was a pretty good accomplishment, right? And so
some would say so, yeah.
Yeah. And so, and then your recruiting starts up and you're being recruited by a number of universities and now it's a possibility. And so you got to make sure you have all your ducks in order to make sure it happens. And I wanted to go away, but I didn't want to go away too far. And so, I was originally going to go to University of PEI, but then Ottawa U came in and went out of their way to help me. I had a summer job and I didn't want to lose my summer job. But if I wanted to go to Ottawa U, I had to go to summer school for a class. Coach reached out to my boss and said, hey, let this kid go to summer school and let him come back to the job when he's done. And it all worked out. And that's how it all went down. That's how I ended up at Ottawa U.
It's funny how it works like that and then turns into that. Yeah. And then how were those years, playing at the next level and competing and finally having a path, working towards school and being able to play some high level basketball? What were those teams like and those experiences?
During my time, first year, was complete rebuild, right? Kind of a different situation that I thought that I was going into. We were supposed to have a veteran team and some of the vets decided they weren't coming back. So we ended up having 10 freshmen that year. I remember that year. So we struggled for about 2 years. And then our third and fourth year, we had pretty good teams. And then our fifth year, again, it was kind of like a rebuild where I was, one of the senior guys, but I thoroughly enjoyed university basketball. The teammates, the friendships, the bonds, the road, like everything about it is a good time, right? Everyone talks about, the wins and the losses, but me, it's about the friendships and the experiences that I had playing at the University of Ottawa that I'll remember the most.
I couldn't agree more. It's just those funny moments on the road, right? Like just all the silly stuff and, tell the kids that I teach and coach, just like if you come back in 10 years and say that high school is the best time of your life, then just punch me in the face, like you're going to 19 to 25, like those years are just they're so fun. Right. And they're so like precious. You're changing so much, you're learning so much, but the kind of like, you have the stress of school, but really that's it. Like you're just living life. Right. And it's a really, really good time. And I agree. It's about those memories. I mean, had some success along the way, but it really isn't about that. When you meet up with guys and go out for a beer or get to chat with someone, it's the funny stuff that comes out, right?
It's the stories you share like 10 years later.
100%.
When you're hanging out with your guys and you're like, you remember that time when we did this?
Yeah.
So those kind of memories, yeah.
And unfortunately, though, those are probably the stories we want to share on the podcast, right?
No. I know we can't do things now. We can't do things now like we did way before.
Yeah,
so different times, different rules and regs now.
I think the cool part for you is like the experiences that you've had and now being in your role, right? Like going through that high school experience, getting recruited, playing, and then being able to fall back on some of the things that you enjoyed about it, the things that you didn't enjoy about the coaching you received, and trying to use those things. Do you find yourself constantly changing and trying to grow as a coach, being involved with the game for so long? And you've mentioned a couple of times about how things are so different these days. I find myself constantly doing different things with the guys and language and how we go about practice and all those things, because they take it so different. Hey, it's such an interesting thing. And I'm sure you find that yourself often.
It is. I mean, it's much different from when I played and then when I started my early coaching. You're never too old to learn. And so your coaching styles, you change through the times and through the years. You learn some things and you watch some different people achieve some success and maybe you try to model some of that as well. It's much different. I mean, the athlete now is more inquisitive, asking more questions about why are we doing it like this? And so back in the day, you never questioned your coach. You just kind of did what the coach asked you to do or tells you to do, right? So it's different now. And, the relationships, you're building, relationships with your kids and kids are, it's different growing up now, right? Than it was when we grew up or when I grew up. And these kids have different distractions and have different things going on in their lives that I just didn't. Or if I did, maybe I had a support system. Maybe we got through it the best way we could. And you see now with all the mental health issues, right? And kids are going through so much. It's a different kind of relationship. It's a different kind of bond. You have to be on top of those things with your players and be a part of their lives outside of basketball and not just basketball. I think that's important. But the game has changed. We started coaching. It was NCAA rules, and now we moved to FIBA rules, which I love. And so as the game changes, your philosophy changes. You got to get better. You got to get sharper, right? You can't be coaching, the game like it was 20 years ago. You got to keep to date with what's going on and recruiting. And when I started, I was the young cat, right? I was the young guy. I was the guy trying to make change, right? Do things differently. And now that I'm the kind of like the old guy on the block, I'm watching all these young guys and the energy and how hard they're working and how much it means to them. And so, it keeps you going. Right. And I would say now that, it's different in every level in terms of just what players can do and how they play. And then just the coaches now and how coaches think and how the game has evolved. And so the game's at a really good place. It really is. And I just wish we had more, I would say, I watched my son yesterday play at Indiana State. They played at Indiana State. And just the crowd and the passion and how much it meant to those fans that, just wish we had that more at our universities. And I know we had it in high school when I played. We had 2,000. We were at high school with 2,000 students. The gym was sold out every game.
Right.
So we're selling out high school games, but we can't sell out university games. And to me, that doesn't make sense.
I agree. I've never really been able to understand it as well, and I don't know what it was like crowd wise when you were involved at Humber too, but same thing, Langara, we're like 20-0. We got like 18 people in the crowd and we know them all, you know what I mean? And it's the same thing. They'll pack the provincials and put 4,000 in for the final games, but UBC, UVic will get 350 people and they should have 1,500. Right. And I don't know what it is either. Maybe it's that, Americans take a lot more pride in sport, I think too, like just that when they wear that that sweater or whatever out, it like really means a lot to them. But you do bring up an interesting point there. Let me ask you, how did you get into the Ottawa job? I'm just intrigued in terms of how that started to roll for you. I know there's got to be a good story there after finishing 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. I just finished at Humber. We had won a national championship after losing all those semifinals to Langara. I finally got one my last year there. We actually played at Humber. We played Sheridan in the final. So that gym was like, whenever Humber Sheridan was like the rival, where the gym was always full. And so it was a great environment to be in.
So did you jump from Ottawa right into Humber right away?
I actually was an assistant at Ottawa. Yeah, I got a teaching job in Toronto.
Okay.
So I moved to Toronto and I was teaching and being an assistant coach at Humber. And so I just got a pretty good position teaching. I was going to be full-time phys ed teacher at an elementary school, which doesn't exist nowadays. But my principal was a really good dude, and he was trying to help me out. And he knew that I could help him out doing that with the school, with the sports teams. And so he had just called me probably 3 days and said, I got good news. I got you full-time phys ed. I was like, all right. And then 3 days later, I got the call from Ottawa U. Then we'd like to offer you the job. And so I had to go back into my principal. And he was like, you got to be kidding me. And I was like, I'm sorry, I got to take this. And so I went on sabbatical. I went on leave for 2 years for my teaching job. And I got the job at Ottawa U, coming off that championship at Humber. When you're a young coach, you kind of, you think you're ready. Like I had done 5 years at Humber as an assistant. I'd done 5 at Ottawa U. So it had been 10 years as an assistant. I thought I was ready, Mm-hmm. And when you get there and you're the head man, it's like, you're really not ready. So you actually go through it, right? You got to go through it and figure out the day-to-day and just everything. And, then you got Carlton down the road and Dave Smart's doing what he's doing. And so you had to figure it out real quick or they would embarrass you, right?
Yeah.
And so that's how I got that job. It was nice to come back to my alma mater. I mean, I had some people behind the scenes helping me get the job. But, having played there for 5 years and then being an assistant for 5 years, I think really helped me get that job.
Always the takeaways, like not burning bridges and developing relationships along the way, right? And treating people well, so that, because you never know when you're going to need to lean on someone else, right? And, if you're a bit of an asshole and didn't treat people with respect and stuff, then you probably would have been way down the list for that job. So going about it the right way, professional, and looking, for the future. How long do you think it took to get the culture really ingrained, or at least your culture that you wanted in Ottawa, GG's basketball, until, DeRuin and Dallin came and ruined everything for you?
Well, those guys were there my first year. So James and Jeffrey were there my first year. And I can't say that I was really a great coach my first year or a good coach, because I saw that the culture needed to be changed. And I spent quite a bit of time on the road recruiting and getting ready for life after those guys.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so, as a head coach, you kind of, as they say, you got to go out and get your own guys. And, these guys weren't my guys per se, and so I was on the road quite a bit recruiting, but then, it was, like, players are pretty smart. They know what the deal is, right? And those guys kind of, I'm in there. I'm a young guy. They're in there. Some of them are fifth-year guys. They haven't had success. And so it's always easy taking over a program and starting from scratch. And so it took us about 3 years to get to the Nationals. We brought in a really good freshman class my first year. I brought James on as an assistant. He was very helpful in terms of relating to those young guys and being their ear and helping them out, having gone through his experiences. But it took us about 3 years. We had a good class of recruits, and they all grew together. And then we were missing one piece, and it was a point guard. And we were lucky to get a pretty good point guard out of Toronto, Josh Gibson Bascom, who kind of, took us to the next level. He made us elite, right? And when you're in the same city as Carlton, there's a lot of pressure. And some of my best memories are those games against Carlton, just because of the crowd and like we talk about crowd and atmosphere. There was nothing like those games. And we try to make, through David, we try to make it an event. And we eventually did, when we put 10,000 people in an arena to watch that game. And that still exists to this day. And, James and Taffy are doing a great job keeping that alive. And it's great to have. I'd like to see again, that's just me thinking outside the box. A rivalry week where I'm sure that every school could probably do it in their province. At least have one rivalry week where we can have the two rivals play each other, and make it a big event and put 5,000 to 10,000 people in an arena and just make it fun. When you're recruiting athletes to Ottawa U, I mean, that's one of your biggest draws is you get to play in front of 10,000 people here at this event, right? And it's something that students at the school, they mark on their calendar. We have a football game that we call Panda at Ottawa U that used to draw 15 to 20,000. And then we had a basketball game that would draw anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000. So it becomes an event. I don't think kids remember the score. It just, hey, I got to mark it on my calendar because it's something cool to do, right? It was that first class of kids who really kind of put us on the map.
And then the program starts to roll, making the final eights and things like that. And within that, you learning and growing. Let's touch on the national team stuff. You've been involved with Canada basketball for so long in so many different roles and places. And what a pleasure it must have been to have those first chances to, represent the Maple Leaf on your chest. Such a cool experience. And you must have some crazy stories from some of those days and continuing those days.
To me, that's the greatest honor. Anytime you can represent your country in an event. I started off as the manager, man. I was grinding it out, doing all the things that nobody wants to do. Right?
That's what I heard. Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. Just
grinding it out and just, learning as I went along, keeping notes as I went along. I mean, I was around Ken Shields, and Ken Shields, man, is an encyclopedia of basketball and his knowledge. So you're taking as much knowledge as you can. And then Mike Cates joined Ken's staff. And so it was a chance for me to be with Mike again. I started there, and then I had been helping out in camps and just volunteering. And I was actually getting to a point where I thought, I was hoping I would get one of the jobs, and it wasn't coming my way. And then finally I got the call from Coach Triano about being the head coach of the cadet team. And that was like the beginning of my coaching experience and being on staffs and just, unbelievable time watching these young guys grow. You sit back now and you watch, RJ Barrett, you watch Jamal Murray, guys that I've coached or are playing in the NBA, Iggy, and just guys who are it's just so much fun watching them and sitting back and saying, if I had a small part in that, I played a real small part in it, and just to watch them and then the relationships I built with those kids. So when I see them, we're always exchanging hugs and stories, and I'm wishing them well. It's just, the countries you get to see, and you get to see how basketball is played around the world. I think that was the biggest thing for me. I was going overseas and I was watching how, the Argentinas and the Australias and the Spains were playing basketball. I was like, hey, I like this. And so I brought some of that back to Ottawa U with me, all right, when I first started. And then I took it to McGill with me. And it was just an opportunity for me, one, to do the thing I wanted to do the most, was represent my country. And then watch and grow the game and bring it back and try to grow the game back home and adding different things and helping my players get to where they want to get to if they want to be pros. Because now I kind of know what it's like being overseas. Like when you're overseas is not for everybody. I mean, everyone thinks that you travel and you're living the life and it's not always what it's meant to be, right? The food's different and you're in a gym. I remember going to Dubai when it was Dubai in August. It's like 120 degrees outside. You couldn't go outside.
Yeah.
Right. So people, you went to Dubai. Yeah, but we went when it was like 150 and you couldn't go outside. You couldn't even go in the pool because you couldn't get out. Because you get out of the pool and you're like, you could catch like your serious sunburn and get burned. Yeah. So not always what it's meant to be, but the experience of coaching and watching teams and how they play and then bringing that back has really helped me. I love it. I mean, something that I would always do, represent my country. It's an honor. And anytime I can do it, I'm stepping up to the plate and I'm doing it. I don't think I've ever said no. I don't think I'll ever say no because it's an honor. All right. Yeah. It doesn't always go as well as you want it to, but it's still, it's an opportunity that most people don't get.
Absolutely. Getting to work with, some of those names that you've mentioned and you've, coached and been around a lot of pros. Is there anything that stands out that separates them? Like, was there something about RJ or Jamal that was just different from the get-go that you noticed, or other than obviously their skill set and their, ability, but like, was it a work ethic thing? Were they already thinking like pros? Was there something that stood out for you with those guys?
Yeah. Part of it, we work ethic. I mean, I know they were in the gym quite a bit. When these kids are like, again, with AAU, and you're a senior in high school and you're trying to get to a Division I school, AAU circuit is more, actually sometimes you're on the AAU circuit so much that by the time you get to play for your country, you're exhausted because you've been on the road, right? And by the time we got some of these athletes, they were fatigued and we had to give them the proper rest. But you could just tell that these guys were going to be pros. The way they carried themselves and just their mindsets, like, hey, I'm better than everybody. They just had this mindset that they were just better than everybody and they were going to work hard to get to where they wanted to go. And, when you got players like that, I mean, and somebody asked me about RJ one time about, what's it like coaching a kid like RJ? It's like, you have to let RJ be RJ, but along the way, you got to, you're always talking to them. You're always trying to help them. And it may not even be a basketball situation. It may be a life situation, right? So anytime, trying to help them and, develop some basketball IQ to go along with all the skills that they have. But you can't take away, what they do best. Sometimes we get in there as coaches and we think, oh yeah, I want to teach them how to play the right way, right? You got 2 weeks with these kids, maybe 3 weeks. This kid's going to the NBA and you're like, you want to change the way he plays? No, you can't do that, right? It's not, that's your ego getting in the way of, what the real purpose of this is development for these kids. And so with development, you gotta coach them up, but you gotta let them be who they are because they're here. They've got to this point because of who they are. Sometimes as coaches, we come in there thinking, I'm going to change the system. I'm going to make it work, right? That's not what you're there for at the youth ages, right? That's not part of what your job is to, nurture these young guys and educate and teach and support them. And I think that's something that I learned over my time as the cadet coach. Because I went in there like that too. I'm going to teach them how to play D. I'm going to tell them how to, And so no, it's you have to change your mindset a little bit and understand the purpose and the objective of everything while you're there.
That's great. Awesome stuff. I just actually, like 2 days ago, listened to a podcast with Jamal Murray on it. And I've never really heard him speak a lot. He seems like a very sort of softer spoken kind of guy. And like, he's got a sort of quieter demeanor, but you're exactly right. Like when he was talking, I was like, this guy's a cold-blooded killer. And like when he was talking, it was like oozing confidence. Like Steven Jackson and Matt Barnes are asking him all these questions. He's like, no, I was better than that guy. No, I'm right there. Nope. The bar for me is Steph Curry. And I'm like, and he wasn't joking. I was like, damn, like just different, right?
Different mindset, different. I mean, Jamal, you have to meet Jamal's dad, Roger, who kind of trained Jamal at a young age and pushed Jamal to where he is, right? That you said, I remember Jamal was an assassin. The one thing I found about RJ and Jamal, they're not afraid of any moment. They're not afraid to fail. Give me the ball. I'll make the shot. If I don't, I'll make the next time. I mean, you watch RJ do it with Canada at U19s, beat the Americans, win the gold medal, right? All RJ, right? RJ had a great game. But Jamal, watch Jamal in the NBA. It's the same way. And I think that's part of their success for sure is their mentality and in the work that they put in behind it. I mean, I remember Roger and Jamal tells a story about missing free throws because they used to work outside and his dad would send him to run the hill if you miss free throws, right? So, it's definitely not for everybody, right? But you got to have a strong mind to be successful at the highest level.
When did you know it was time for Ottawa? Like you just needed some change and your heart was telling you just to go for a different adventure? Or were you thinking about it for a while or?
No, you know what? In reality, I mean, Ottawa was a great job because it gave me an opportunity and the people there that were amazing with me. But there were certain things about it I didn't like. I spent a lot of time fundraising money and I didn't want more time fundraising than I did coaching.
It's exhausting.
And so I knew it came with the job and I accepted it. But you get to a point, I was 9 years in, we were having success and I just wanted some long-term security and I wasn't getting it. And so when the opportunity came up at McGill, it gave me some long-term security. It gave me a pretty good pay scale. I was getting a raise and I was working for my AD, the guy, Drew Love, who was the AD at Carleton. So that's how I first met Drew. And then Drew went to McGill. And then, when the job came open and I sat down with Drew to talk about it, we kind of shared a lot of the same similarities in terms of how we wanted to build the program and what we wanted to do. And so it's really important, that you kind of share the same ideas as your AD when you take a job, right?
Why so?
Because you can want different things for your program and for your kids, and then your AD's like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. There's roadblocks, right? And you're always coming up against roadblocks, and it's frustrating. All right, we built Ottawa U. Myself, my staff, the kids, we built it till we thought was like, we're one of the top 5 programs in the country. And so I think we took a program that was in deficit and we put it in surplus. That was something we were proud of. Our kids were graduating. Our kids were going to play overseas. We had, it was just everything about Ottawa U was at a good place. And I just thought, hey, I could use some long-term security here. And that's what I wanted. And I wanted some more money, to be honest. And maybe I was selfish and I was much younger then, right? So, but I just thought I was worth more than what was going on there. And, but it was hard because I was leaving behind a program. It's like leaving behind your children. You started something from scratch and you built it. And the people that were there, amazing people that I worked with in the community, the Ottawa community, embraced me. All right. You're kind of like the little brother to Carlton. And then we kind of grew and grew and grew. And then the people in the community just, I was just part of that community. I loved it there. And so when we lost our last game, it was a playoff game to Lakehead. And I think Lakehead, Scott Morrison, when they went to the Nationals that year. And my point guard, Josh, was now a senior. He was graduating. I decided it was just time. And the timing was right. I was disappointed because I was going to leave a couple of kids behind that I recruited that I really, really liked as young men. But sometimes you just know it's time. And I was getting a little burnt out there, to be honest.
Fair enough. I appreciate that honest reflection. And I think it's good too for people who have conversations with people and they say, oh, did you ever think about applying for, a college position or whatever, right? And not that I would get them, but just really do love coaching. But I don't think people really realize some of the stuff like yourself that these coaches have to do behind the scenes in Canada, right? Like to think about personally fundraising. So I got to worry about recruiting. So I got to get on the road and get guys to come play for our program. We've got to be good X's and O's. I got to convince a few assistants to work with me for not much money as well. Right. And they've got to either be students or have a decent job. Right. So you got to juggle that. And then on top of that, you got to go and try to bring money to the program so that you can say to these guys, hey, like, come on in, we can, offer you some school or whatever. Like it has to become exhausting. And I give every single post-secondary coach in our country like the utmost respect. And I don't think there's any shame in feeling like, hey, this is what I feel my value is. And are you willing? Okay, well then I think I need to find something else. So I think that's good for people to hear.
Yeah, I think too, at the point, where basketball coaches weren't getting paid a lot, even full-time guys. So you go back to referencing assistant coaches. When I started as an assistant coach, I made $500, right? And so
I don't mean to laugh, but
it's nothing, right?
Yeah,
right. And I was, working in the weight room a little bit, just trying to grind it out and make enough money so I can live. When I was now as a full-time guy, with success, you can't help but look across the border, and guys are making millions of dollars doing less than what we're doing as a full-time coach with 8 assistant coaches and stuff like that, and all the money and all the resources. And so, you just get to a point where, like you said, you got to think, what am I worth? We've seen the salaries of head coaches, go up throughout the years, and as it should. I think we could still, we like to make more money if we could, but now we got full-time assistants. And that's great for our game and for young coaches to get involved. So I like to think that, when some of us just said, hey, we need to make more money, right? We need to get paid for what we're doing, that we kind of started a trend and said, hey, we're not going to work for less than what we're worth. And so McGill gave me that opportunity, and I'm forever grateful to Drew for that opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. No, and nice to hear that you feel like the landscape's changing. I feel like we're behind still. Like it should have been a long time ago, but all we can ask for is progression, right? And things with the streaming and kind of the social media and, our athletes being able to be more out there and more present is good. And as long as it continues in that direction, but I think you bring up a really, really good point. Just aware of your time here and know that you want to get out there with your son. Okay.
I'm good. He just texted me. He's in the library, so we're good.
Okay. Oh, what a guy.
Yeah.
He learned something from his dad.
No, he didn't learn that from his dad. He learned that from his mother.
He learned what not to do. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. True enough.
How about was that time at McGill, the experiences there, and shifting from sort of like getting Ottawa, like you mentioned, to an elite level, leaving that and then going to a new place? What did you take from the previous experience and develop and push into McGill to try and get it to the same spot?
You know what? It was a fresh start for me. It was really because now I was going to a place that you're coaching a different kind of athlete, really. These guys aren't there to become pros and go overseas and make money. They're there to be lawyers and doctors and, accountants and engineers. And so it was a different mindset. And it was like, the challenge was, hey, you can't win at a school like McGill because it's all academics. It's all about academics. And wanted to prove that you could kind of do it at a school like McGill, where you could be successful in the classroom, but also successful on the court. And again, you had to go through a whole culture change. And this was new to me because I didn't know, how many hours can we train with these guys that doesn't affect their school, because they'll just quit.
Yeah.
They're there to go to school.
So interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So we did some research and how many hours do guys at Harvard and Princeton and all the Ivy League schools, we asked them, how many hours do you train? And so we came up with, they gave us an answer and we came up with it and tried to get a pretty good balance of how many hours we could train with our guys and make sure that their school doesn't suffer. But again, the big thing was culture change, right? Just wanting guys who wanted to play basketball and not just there for school, but for school and basketball. And so we were able to do that. I had great assistant coaches at McGill as well. I mean, I've been fortunate everywhere I've gone. I've had great assistant coaches. And so we built this program, and I think there was one guy by the time we won our first championship, I think year 3 or year 4, there was one guy left from when we started, and he had quit and come back.
Wow.
So it's just a different mindset. And, we had to change the culture. And that was the biggest thing. People at McGill were amazing too. I've been fortunate. I've worked a lot of good places with a lot of good people, and the basketball community there too. They embraced me. Mm-hmm. I wanted to get into the community, and I wanted to work in the community and do clinics and invite everybody to practice who wanted to come watch practice and do those things and just put McGill basketball on a higher level. Right. And we were fortunate to do that with, winning some championships, but we played Duke in Montreal in front of 10,000 people. That's an experience my guys are never, ever going to forget. And so providing those, we went to Costa Rica and played in Costa Rica against American schools. And so it was just a different vibe for McGill that I guess they weren't used to. So, and they let me grow as a coach. They let me be me. Right. And so I really appreciated my time there. It was hard. It was harder for me to leave McGill than it was for me to leave Ottawa. Yeah.
Why is that? Just
what? I really didn't have a reason to leave McGill except for maybe the conference. We didn't have enough teams. We're playing the same teams 4 times, and that's not fun. So that was the main reason for me leaving. It wasn't about anything McGill wasn't doing or doing. McGill treated me like really, really well. Our basketball program was in a good place.
Yeah. I
was raising money. I didn't have to run any camps to raise money, but I knew I needed some raise money because I wanted to do some extra things for my guys. And so it was a different kind of alumni. I mean, you saw recently that George Langara donated $1 million to men's basketball.
Yeah.
And so that was something that I'd been working on when I was at McGill. I developed a great friend. I still have a great friendship with George. And I kept pushing George, you could do more. You can give more, right? And you can make an impact on university sport that no one else has, especially men's basketball. And when you do it, I know other people at other schools will do it, and you can change the game. You can be a pioneer and change the game for these athletes. That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to do stuff like that, because I was a different kind of alumnus who had some different, they had some money, and I tried to, I would get on a train at 8 a.m. in the morning to Toronto, meet with an alumnus for lunch, and get back on the train and come back for practice all in one day. Right. But there was that kind of potential there to grow the game financially and make sure everything was, you could do things, and then other schools would start doing things because you were doing things differently. And so I think that was, really what I was getting into more towards the late stages of my time at McGill. But it's an amazing place. It's an amazing city. Basketball in Montreal right now is growing at a fast pace, almost like when Toronto started to grow and grow and grow to what it is now. McGill is doing that now, and you're seeing pros now in the NBA from Montreal.
did they look at you sideways when you came with the Duke proposal, or was it?
You know what? It's interesting. It's a different mindset. I can go back to Ottawa U when we got it going. And I was speaking to my AD. And he says, "Hey, coach, you got to slow down a little bit. Your program's going too fast. Right? We can't support everything that you want to do here." When at McGill and I bring in everything to McGill, it's like, how do we make this happen? So it's just, we want to make this happen, right? And so it was a different. But that was a different time when I was at Ottawa U. It was a different time for basketball than where it was when I was at McGill. It continuously grows and grows. And McGill, how do we make it happen? How do we make it happen? And so they were very supportive. And the way they run things at McGill, I was really impressed how they treated the athletes. The athletes are treated really well at McGill, and I love that. And now that I've started my job at Ryerson's a little different than McGill, obviously. But my biggest thing is to make sure that what my athletes were getting at McGill is what I'm trying to get my athletes at Ryerson. And they have most of that in place, but there are a couple things. Like for me now, it's about making sure that these guys get everything they need and more to make it a great experience for them. Because when I played, you're playing on nothing, right? Your meal money was like $10, right? And you're eating out. You weren't even eating half the time, right? You're eating whatever you could for as cheap as you could find it.
Yep.
So now you're trying to get your guys as much meal money as you can. You're trying to get good meals, good hotels, and again, when I played, we're sharing beds. Now we don't do that, right? The quality of the hotels we stay in is much better. Then we're going to Costa Rica. We never went to Costa Rica, right?
Yeah.
Out of you, we were taking our teams down to Texas and playing Division I school. Like, it's a different time. That's the thing now for me. My focus now is the athletes, really making sure that they have everything they need.
How long you see yourself kicking around the game for? I feel like you're just going to be one of these guys that's always hovering around.
You know what? It's interesting. I've come down here to Valpo a couple times, and the staff has been very welcoming.
I wanted to jump into that. Like, how's that experience having your son? And that must be very cool for you, hey?
You know what? It's amazing to watch your son at a place where he's really happy. And the Valpo family, it's a small school, and the coaches are really good with my son. They treat my son really well. Everyone in the community treats they're the team here, right? Valpo men's basketball is the team, and they're embraced by the community, right? But there's a lot of pressure too when you're the main show in town. You got to produce, so there's some of that. But it's he's worked really hard to get to where he is right now. He was a provincial level soccer player and had to make a decision at 14 or 15 about what he wanted to do, and he chose basketball. And he's been doing it. When your son leaves your home in grade 10 to go to prep school, it's difficult, right? I mean, he's
young.
Yeah, it's young. He's in grade 10 and he's leaving home to go to prep school. You're not going to see your son every day, and he's going there, and you're trusting people to raise your son basically when you're not there. And so through TRC in Orangeville, he had two great experiences. But Valpo, it's pretty much an extension of that. And so these guys would let me come in and watch practices. Attend a couple of film sessions, but we got to be careful because although I'm a coach, I'm still a parent, so we can't break any of the rules that go on, right? So we're very careful, but they let me watch practice, and we talk basketball, and it's pretty cool. And then, like I said, we driving down to Indiana State to watch my son play in the home of Larry Bird, right? If you're a basketball guy, it doesn't get any better than that.
Pinch yourself, yeah.
Right, yeah. And so you walk in that arena, you walk into the arena, and there's the statue of Larry Bird outside the arena. And now you're in basketball country. And Indiana's basketball country. And so the fans here are knowledgeable, but they're fair, but they're tough, right? And so he's getting acclimated to what's going on and learning how things are done here. And the NCAA is a little different than being in prep school. And so he's enjoying that a lot. And so for me, when I'm around it now, I wish I kind of pursued it in a different way. Maybe I would have been down here already. I really wasn't aggressive in terms of trying to get to the States. But now being around the whole atmosphere and the whole vibe, I kind of second guess myself a little bit about not doing that.
So what advice would you give to a younger coach who's maybe just not willing to throw themselves out there, maybe just nervous, but would you tell a young coach, hey, just go for it? If it's on your goal sheet, like send emails, contact, reach out. How does someone go about?
I would definitely recommend, look, if it's a goal, if it's a dream of yours, do it. I've been coaching a long time in Canada, but the vibe here coaching is much different. I mean, coaches here are much more respected here than they are at home. All right. And not just through pay, just in general. Right. And it's just a different vibe. And just to be around the excitement of sport and people appreciating the sport and supporting their school. Like, we talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
It's different. And being a coach here, there's so many opportunities. There's so many programs. There's so many different levels. It's different for me now. Like I say to myself, I kind of look at it as, if there's a young coach out there, right, who's just starting out, they could use an old veteran like me who's been through, who's been a head coach for 20 years now, an assistant for 10, who can help you with some of the smaller things that you don't know, right? Sometimes these younger coaches are like, even myself, I started as a young coach. I didn't know anything, but I thought I knew everything, right? And I think it's the same with a lot of coaches. You think you're going to come in here and you're going to come in and change the program and blah, blah, blah. There's a reason they've made a coaching change, because the program's not very good.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually the case, right? And so you're not coming in here with everything laid out for you. You're coming in here because they haven't won, and you got to change. Like, you got to change culture. And so someone who's been through it, I think I could help a program that way, using my experience and giving my experience and my thoughts. And so looking at it from a different angle now, how I could probably get into it if I wanted to try to chase it a little bit. But for young people, yeah, man, go get it. Go get it. You got to see what it's like to be down here, and the excitement of being down here and being involved in it, and the respect that you'll get as a coach. And then who knows? I mean, it's the NBA is not far away, right? And so it's the people you meet, the networks that you meet, the social, the connections that really help you in the game. So if you got some people in the States that you're connected with through camps or different events, and it opens a door for you, I would open that door and I would walk right through it now.
Yeah. And we've talked a couple of times about what's changed over, you starting out at Humber as an assistant. You can't just hop on the internet and search up Indiana State, or, and reach out to the third assistant coach. It's like, now you can hop online. Here's my resume. Here's what I've done. Do you need a student assistant? Like, you can contact any school you want. Right. So
it's so different now. I mean, and there are opportunities. You just, like you said, you got to work to find those opportunities and be aggressive. If you can, if you can recruit and bring kids with you, then that even helps you even better. But once you're down here, you truly understand it. Truly understand it. Sports are important here.
Let's do some fun questions and then we'll get you on your way. How's that sound?
All right, my man.
All right. You a music guy at all?
I'm an old school R&B guy.
Okay. Oh.
A little bit of the old rock and roll groups like Queen and Kiss and no Rush and those groups.
Okay. Yeah. So you get couple tickets, best seat in the house, any concert, dead or alive, doesn't matter who they are. Who are you going to see? You get one concert.
I'm probably Michael Jackson.
Hey.
Probably Michael Jackson, yeah.
Did you get a chance?
No, I didn't.
No.
I didn't. And I think, Queen would be a second choice for me.
Mm-hmm.
Watching Freddie Mercury, could have been at Live Aid, he had performed.
Oh, man. That movie, when they did it, like, it felt like you were at the concert. Hey, it was like,
I watched that movie like 10 times.
Yeah.
yeah. I love it.
Just to get to the end. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Who have been some of the most important people in your life?
I mean, your parents, obviously. I mean, my parents and people that have supported me through the game. Mike Cates has been a big influence on my life in the way. If it wasn't for Mike, I'm not where I am right now, in terms of basketball. But I would say Mike in terms of basketball, but, your parents and your family in terms of everything else.
Great. Is there an all-time book that you could recommend to someone? I don't know if you read much, or a movie, like an all-time movie. What you got? Are you much of a reader?
You know what? I've read a lot of basketball books, but I haven't read many lately.
Okay.
But as far as movies, I mean, Shawshank Redemption is my movie.
My man.
Yeah, I've seen that thing 100 times.
What a movie that is.
Great movie.
Oh, there's
Great
Corbs.
movie.
That's a top 3 for me as well. Yeah. All right. I like it. Here we go. Okay.
We're a bit of old school guys, so we're like, but don't get me wrong, I like the last 2 Avengers that I watched when Thanos was the man.
Yeah. I think some of the kids call me Thanos.
Yes, for sure.
I think some of the kids call me Thanos behind my back.
Yeah, I was going to say that. You're kind of sporting that Thanos look right now.
Yeah, the hairline's got away from me since the Langara days and Brandon days. Yeah.
Did these kids know how good a player you were back in the day?
That's for them to find out, you know?
You got to do the research, right? Okay. They got to do their research. I had nightmares about you, Aaron Mitchell.
I'm sorry, man.
The Langara press break. Oh.
Sequencing, baby. Yeah,
the sequencing. That's the one. Yeah, that's the one. It took me a while to figure that bad boy out.
Yeah. Love it. How do you feel about ketchup on macaroni?
When you were a kid, ketchup on everything. Now that I'm adult, ketchup on nothing.
Not even fries.
The sodium will kill me now.
Oh, look at him. He's thinking healthy. Attaboy.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. Okay. All right. It's good. See, that's learning. That's growth mindset right there. That's exactly what it's all about. Yeah.
Yeah, you put ketchup on everything when you were a kid, didn't you?
It is true. You've seen so many games and been a part of as a player and a coach. If there was 1 or 2 games you could go back to for any reason, good or bad, is there a game that stands out to you that you'd like to experience again? Whether you could change the outcome or relive a moment, anything?
It's funny that because with James and I, we coached that cadet team when we were in Argentina, and none of the youth teams had beaten the U.S. yet. And we were up on the U.S. late or midway through the 4th quarter, and the game got away from us a little bit. That would be the one game. Because, you're representing your country, and it was going to be the first time something was going to be done at that age group. And we were pretty close to doing it. And then Roy did it, I think, the next year or the year after. And, you're watching it, and it's just like we were that close to doing it, right? And it was something that hadn't been done. So I would say that one. There's so many different games, right? You've been involved in so many things, but winning a silver medal at the Commonwealth Games, with Kev. That was a great experience, right? It was my first time with Kev coaching with Kev. We had a great time in Australia together, and to bring home a silver medal was pretty cool. So different events, my first World Championships in Toronto, 1994, the Dream Team, Dream Team 2 actually with Shaq and those guys. And so
was that at the Garden?
It was at the Garden.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah. So basketball has given me so many memories and so many opportunities that I'm truly grateful, and so I could probably list off 15 to 20, but I know we don't have that much time right now.
It's cool, man. I love it. With that question, who are some of the players that stand out to you, whether you played against or have coached against, that are you like, okay, we got a plan and our plan did not work? I mean, obviously there's some Americans that yeah. Here's the plan for guarding Shaq tonight. But who are some guys that you were like, damn, that guy could really hoop? We go back to that game, and we were playing so well, and then Gary Trent at 17 years old just took over that whole game, and it was just watching a 17-year-old do that was pretty impressive. In terms of coaching, I mean, Carleton kids, man, our battles were against Carleton, right? And they had some great players. Osvaldo was always a tough. Jonty was always a tough check, and then Aaron Dornicamp. But there was just so many. Those battles, those games against Carleton are the most memorable for me. I mean, and because of the atmosphere, but just the level of competition and the respect that that we had. I think we had for each other, right? I mean, David, I can honestly say that Dave Smart made me a better coach. Because if you weren't prepared to play Carleton, they would embarrass you. They would beat you by 70, right? And so for me, it's like we can't get beat by 70, right? To me, that was fun. But when I look at it all, we played so many great players when they were young in terms of the cadet teams, and then at the university level, I remember which team it was, but there was a guy who put up 27 on us at the half. And you play those August games against those Division I schools. You do a little bit of scouting, but you don't do a lot of scouting. And this guy put up 20. I'm like, who is this guy? And we found out that he was like the second leading scorer in the NCAA last year.
right? And I'm like, from then on, we're going to take these U.S. games a little more seriously and do some scouting reports, right? For me, it was just the opportunity of playing. I was a young guy. I was a young coach. One of our first games, I can't remember the guy's name, but he put up 27.5 on us. I was like, well, okay. It was a small school. It wasn't even a big school. I never got a chance to see Kobe.
Yeah.
But Kobe was my guy. Magic was my guy. I loved Magic Johnson when I was growing up. I mean, I cried the day he retired.
Me too.
And I cried the day Kobe died. So I've cried for two players, and they're both Lakers. Yeah, so Magic was my guy. I love Magic. He changed the game. I thought Magic changed the game.
I agree. Say more.
When Kobe died, I mean, that was a sad day.
Yeah, I think the reflection everybody says, and I felt the same too. I wasn't like a big Kobe fan per se, respected him, but just sort of, I think he had so much more after basketball life. I think he was about to do so many great things for, his daughters, the women's side of the game, and just everything in general. And it's just, that's the sad part about it, is he never got to, push that part of it. So
it's interesting now you're hearing all the Kobe stories after he's passed.
Yeah.
And all the things, like you said, how he's going to help the women's game, and just what that podcast you mentioned with Barnes and with Jackson.
Yeah, that one was so good, right?
And those guys tell Kobe stories all the time, right? And
all the time.
Some great stories. And so it's those two guys were really, I enjoyed watching, and I enjoy watching LeBron now. I really enjoy watching LeBron because he reminds me of Magic.
Yeah, Magic was the man.
Yeah,
love it.
Yeah.
You break the diet. You're not worried about the sodium. You go to the store. What bag of chips? You get to pick a bag of chips.
Bacon and hickory.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's my favorite. I still have it, and it's killing me. It's killing me. Chips is definitely a weakness. I don't know if it's because you're on the road recruiting, you stop and get gas, you get a bag of chips to go with it, right?
Yeah, 100%.
But that's my go-to, bacon and hickory.
Nice. Yeah, you just can't have them in the house in general, right?
No. Yeah. You can't buy them. Bring them to the house. They'll be gone.
Yeah. Two more questions for you. Who would you like to see on this podcast, A Hoops Journey? But you have to help us get them.
Wow.
So who would be someone you think that's got a good story that you could reach out and say, hey, I think you'd be good to deal with this Mitchell guy for about an hour or so?
Did you have James on already?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you had James on already, yeah.
Who had Mike on.
Oh, yeah? I'm sure you had Kev on already. Kevin's got great stories.
Oh, he was like episode 12 or something, and all he did was whine to me about how it took me that long to get him on. I'm like, okay,
that sounds like Kev. That sounds like Kev a lot. Let me see anybody in Ontario here that would be good. You know what? Patrick Tatum would be a good guy for you to get on.
Okay.
PT who was at Mac. I'd definitely help you get PT on there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Before I ask you the last question, was the mustache as legendary as it should have been? Huh?
Now I know that's a James thing right there, man. That's got James written all over me. You know what? Back in the day, it was. Back in the day, the stash was the go-to. But now I don't think I could rock the stash. Now it's a little goatee action. Every Movember, it's a goatee action that I'll rock once in a while. But no, the stash. That guy kills me with the stash. He does. Send me a picture out of nowhere of me in the stash. So he always reminds me of the stash. He's just jealous because he could never grow one.
Fair enough. That's probably true, JD. It's probably true. Last question for you we always like to ask is, if you could do it all again, you would what?
If I could do it all again, I probably would chase my dream about being in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Pursue that more aggressively if I could do it all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Just change that. I mean, I think I've enjoyed all my years of coaching, all my years of playing. And so I've gotten so much from this game. The game has given me so much and so much opportunity. I think I just wish I had pursued it a little bit more aggressively and to get to the U.S. at a higher level, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've done all our stuff. In actuality, there's no more places left for me to coach in Canada,
mm-hmm.
right? So the next step would have been, an NBA position or a college position in the U.S. Well, that's what I would do differently.
Well, thanks for being with us. We, wish you, your family, your son, your program continued success. Any last sort of reflections or thoughts before we let you go and go rebound and put them through a workout?
Yeah, no, I appreciate your time. I love that you're doing this, and it's nice to sit back and reflect on the game and reflect on people that you've met along the way. And I said to him, you gave me nightmares at Langara, man. I was up all night trying to figure out sequence. And then, Randy would always steal a game. Randy had that ability, right? And that's
absolutely.
Those are the stories that, when we sit down and we, even with James and I, we sit down and have a beer and we talk about Langara, Humber.
Yeah.
That's going to be with us forever. That's a part of our lives, right? And just the guys that you played with and the guys that I coached on that team, the friendships that we still have. That's what basketball is. It's beautiful because you have friendships that last forever.
What a great way to end. I couldn't put it better myself. A guy who's been involved in the game for, 30 plus years, given so much to it. Much respect to you and everything you've done to help grow, mentor young coaches. I'm sure it's a bit of a badge of honor to see where James is at and what he's been able to do. And there's probably many more along the way. We appreciate your time and being with us. Continued success and all the best to you, Coach. It was great to reconnect.
Appreciate you, Aaron. Thank you so much. Thank you, Corbin.
You bet. Amazing episode. Thanks to our sponsors, Good Lad Clothing and Parkside Brewery, and we'll see you on the next episode.